Welcome to the Our Vision Caribbean and Latino Filmmaker Podcast, hosted by Charles Aline and Dr. Christopher C. Odom. On this episode, we speak with actor, filmmaker, social media influencer, and Univision political correspondent Heidy Torres. Through the arts, acting, on-air personality, and activism, Heidy uses emerging technology, such as TikTok and Instagram, to expand her brand, elevate social issues to public discourse, and empower the people to affect social justice and social change. This episode is sponsored by the Our Vision Caribbean and Latino Film Festival, which is dedicated to ensuring that Caribbean and Latino filmmakers have a voice that's heard and a wide audience to showcase their work.
So welcome to the Our Vision Caribbean Latino Film Festival podcast. And today we have a special guest, Heidy Torres. She's an on-air contributor to Univision. She's also a filmmaker. So Heidy, welcome to the show and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. And what can I tell you? I feel like I am many things at the same time. And I sometimes wish there was at least 4 more hours in a day so I can get more things done. But yes, I am a filmmaker, an actor, and screenwriter. And also I am an activist. And that's what led me to get involved in politics. I got more involved the way that I am now after the death of George Floyd. That was kind of like my wake-up call. After I saw comments of Latin people, like the Latin Hispanic community commenting like, oh, but he resisted, oh, but this, oh, but that, excusing what had happened to him. And I had some sort of like an encounter with a huge creator that was misinforming. And after that, I decided to start making videos. And that's how I got here. And at this point in my life, I am doing more when it comes to politics than even filmmaking. As of right now.
A good thing you just say something about George Floyd, because the interesting thing is Chris just did a documentary on George Floyd. Chris, I mean, this is a great opportunity for you now to just touch a little bit about George Floyd.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much, Heidy. When you introduce yourself, you touched on a lot of things in my life because I myself am a multidisciplinary artist, and I was in graduate school working on my PhD in text and technology digital media, which is focused on creating solutions to problems in social justice and social change. And then George Floyd was thrust down upon me and the world, and that ended up becoming the focus of my dissertation. You know, how did and why did social media, visual imagery, and narrative inspire the world to take on a global movement for social justice and social change? And so George Floyd also had a profound impact on me. It was suddenly like I was living in the 60s, like my parents, with people marching in the streets. Not surprising that we had a presidency with kids in cages, and many of the Nazis are good people. And so that's what it all came to in the middle of a global pandemic. So I can definitely relate with the path that you have taken. And justice for George Floyd, the tipping point, it's now about to begin its film festival run for about the next year and a half, starting in January, with our eyes set on a world premiere at Sundance. So enough plugging myself.
I want to watch that. Like now, gotta have like special admission, a special link.
I'll send you a link to the trailer after we finish.
Okay, that should do it.
Okay, so now you start to have this social justice take on life. I noticed, like, when you talk about the Dominican community, how are the Dominican community accepting you when you talk about colorism within the community?
They do not accept me. It's been tough because I've always been aware of colorism since I was a kid. Like my mother is white. She is white, like, but she's Latina, and my father is black. But in the Dominican Republic, they will say that he is not black, but moreno, because the thing with our culture is that they want to be far away from blackness and they want that proximity to whiteness. So he's moreno, right? But in reality, he's black. If he comes to the United States, people will see him as black. So they had four children, and I was the one that took more from my mom's side. I was blonde when I was a kid, and I knew that was good. That I was the whitest kid. I knew that. And I remember when I would fight with the darkest of my siblings, and she would be like, "Oh, but you're too skinny." I was like, "Oh, but you're too dark." So even as a kid, I realized that in our society, the whiter you were, the better it was. So, and I feel so bad now that I see, but at that moment, it took me to come to the United States to realize what colorism was, and of course I had this problem inside of me to realize this, because unfortunately that's part of our culture. And once you come here, you see a lot of Black Dominicans that they basically, when they're confused and they're, "Oh, you're black." "No, I'm Dominican." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're a Black Dominican." But they deny that. And I've seen it many times. And I see the way that Haitians are treated in the Dominican Republic and how they want to distance themselves from Haitians when basically we're kind of like the same. And they don't want to admit that. And when I started talking about it, it was because the Listing Diario, which is one of the biggest newspapers in the Dominican Republic, they posted a story about a Haitian pregnant woman who had been detained by police because they wanted to deport her, and she was in labor. And they didn't believe her. And she almost died. She almost bled to death until they finally took her to the hospital. And hopefully and thankfully, they survived. And they posted this story. And when I went to the comment section, all Dominicans were like, "Oh, you are making us look bad to the world." So what worried them was the way that people would perceive the Dominican Republic as a racist country when we are not. And this lady said in one of the comments, "Oh, but those women are so used to that. What's the big deal?" Like as if because they are Haitians, they do not endure the same type of pain that other women feel. And that's when I was like, you know what? I'm going to take on this. And I started making videos. I've received death threats about that. If we see you here in the Dominican Republic, we're going to give you what's good for you. Things like that. It's very bad. And I've recently been posting more on my English TikTok. I don't even do it in my Spanish one because they are not ready for that conversation. I feel like the people who actually speak English, who are Latinos, they are more, they're like ready to at least have that challenge to their perceptions of colorism in Latin America. So, and I have a lot of people like fighting to have this proximity to whiteness, even though we are a Black island.
Why is that? Why are they fighting it so hardly? I mean, I noticed, I don't know if you can touch on this a little bit. I noticed that the Dominican government is also trying to build a wall to keep the Haitians out of
They got that from Donald Trump, FYI.
Yeah, that's Trump. Yeah.
But I mean, I was saying to myself, how can you build a wall on an island? You understand what I'm saying? Where the ocean is right there, and you can just, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm trying to figure out why the proximity to whiteness, it really doesn't, if you're dark skinned, it really doesn't benefit you. You don't get anywhere. You don't achieve anything. And I'm trying to, why are we holding on to that so desperately?
It's the heritage from colonialism. They told us that the whiter you were, the better you were. And
yes,
obviously, you see Dominicans coming to this country and they don't want to acknowledge that this country is racist. But at the same time, they don't want to be seen as Black because they understand what comes with it. They understand that if they're seen as Black, everything that happens to Black people in this country will happen to them as well. But in reality, this is what colonialism, the people who colonized taught them, and it's ingrained in our culture. And the Dominican Republic, not only because of that, but also because Haiti, our independence was from Haiti. So that even added more. They just don't want to be seen as the same. You see Dominicans having pride in, they're not Catholic. I'm like, the only reason why the country is Catholic is because that's what colonizers were, so they don't understand that, and they just perceive. I compare Dominicans, unfortunately, their sense of patriotism is the same sense of patriotism that MAGA Republicans have. They think that if you criticize the people or the country or whatever it is, that makes you unpatriotic. When in reality, being patriotic is, in my opinion, recognizing what's wrong in your country and trying to change it for the better of the people, so that everybody can be the same in the country. When I criticize the United States, they tell me, like MAGA Republicans, for example, they tell me, leave. You don't have to be here. You're not patriotic. And they think that they're patriots. I'm like, no, you're not. Because when you're denying things that happen in this country that everybody else can see, that's not being patriotic. That's just being in a cult, which is what I think they are in. But no, I think that being patriotic means that you recognize the faults in your country, and I will be pointing fingers to the United States or to the Dominican Republic or any other country where I think that they are not doing it well. And unfortunately, in the Dominican Republic, there are a lot of human rights violations against Haitians.
So you used an excellent term, colonization. And I want to make sure that the listeners at home understand we're not here to attack the Dominican Republic. In all cultures where there was colonialism, the obsession with whiteness, that white is right, is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It doesn't matter if it's the Dominican Republic. It doesn't matter if the United States of America. It doesn't matter if there's India, where there's almost 2 billion people. There is this embracement with whiteness. Even in Japan, the lighter you are, the better you are. People are covering their arms and their face just to make sure they can't tan. So this obsession with whiteness is indeed a universal theme amongst other cultures. And also for listeners at home who heard you say that your hair was blonde growing up, I'm sure some people are like, sure it was. Actually, it is very, very common for mixed children to have blonde hair and blue eyes. And then when they hit adolescence around 13, the hair and the eyes change. And so, yeah, she's not pulling your leg. That is very common.
It's funny you mentioned that, because people, when I don't remember how that specific conversation came up, but obviously when I make a video and people comment, I might reply to some of the comments, and somebody asked me, so you said that you were blonde when you were a kid, and I just replied to that. And you see people in the comment section saying, you're a liar. And I'm like, I do have pictures, I can totally show them to you. But yes, people attack me. My hair started changing when I was like 4 or 5. You will see how it will grow to be darker. And I have pictures of it being darker. My hair was kind of like reddish at some point before it came to being brown. But yeah, people attack me because of that. People tell me, no, your mom is not white. Things like that.
So growing up, I had Santa Claus red hair. It wasn't everywhere, but it was definitely mixed in. It was all in my beard, and I felt weird about it. I used to try and dye my beard, and people were like, no, that's good. But as I got older, the red hair disappeared. But yeah, I've always had red, blonde, and all kinds of hair growing out of my head when I had hair.
All right, so a question to you guys then, Heidi, is that you've been a warrior for this, and do you see like a light at the end of the tunnel? Do you see people? Is there hope? Because you're saying all this, they're just clinging on to this white supremacy. Is there hope? Do you see like the ice breaking? Do you experience where you talk to someone and they're like, yeah, I get it. I get where you're coming from. I understand. And I truly want to do something about it.
There are some woke Dominicans that definitely are. I went recently to the Dominican Republic. I went like 2 times because my grandfather was sick. Unfortunately, he passed recently, but I had time to spend with my family, and I had this conversation with my cousins who live there, who are darker skinned. and they do not necessarily consider themselves Black, but they are what you would consider here light skin. And we were having a conversation, and I was like, maybe this is the time for me to bring it up. And I asked them, and I told them what was happening in TikTok and how I was being attacked by Dominicans who refused to say or admit that we are a Black country. And I explained everything. And to my surprise, they were like, we are a Black country. We are Black. And I was in shock to hear my cousins to actually admit that they were Black and that we are a Black country. I was like, oh my God, things are not as bad as I thought. So there are woke Dominicans who admit that. There are Dominicans that have the Black hair. And you know how in the Dominican Republic, people are obsessed with hair, by the way. If you had my hair, you have good hair. And if you have other type of hair that it's more curlier, it's bad hair. Es pelo bueno, pelo malo. And it went like very young, at a very young age, they do this thing that is called alisado to make hair look like straight, right? So now there's a sector, a group of people in the Dominican Republic who are refusing to do that. And they're wearing their afros and they are proud of it. And right now they're fighting to make legislation because over there, here we are like some years above that. We already went through that here. So they are trying to pass legislation in which it's discriminatory. It's considered discriminatory to tell women how to wear their hair. And right now that's where we are. And obviously there's a part of the country saying that's not professional. You shouldn't be going to work like this, like that. The people who haven't realized where all of this comes from, but there are woke Dominicans. And I do feel that eventually we will be able to move past this. I don't know how many decades that's going to take because I am talking about decades. But at the same time, I don't know if that change will bring the change towards the perception of Haitians, because unfortunately they cannot see it. For me to see it, I had to be here and see it from the perspective of, okay, I'm in the United States and understand the history of Blackness and all of the struggle in the United States for me to be able to understand what's happening in the Dominican Republic. I have friends that tell me, because can you believe that most of the women who gave birth in public hospitals were Haitians? And I was like, why are you mad? Did they stop taking care of Dominican women because they were only taking Haitians? What's going on? And they don't, and they're like, when I say things like that, they're like, like they kind of like in shock because they didn't see it that way. And then I'm like, did they stop taking care of Dominican women because of that? And they're like, no, but, and I was like, no, but nothing. But I do think that at some point things are going to change in the Dominican Republic, slowly but surely.
That's good. So you're saying that the young people really are the hope of the future. I guess that's what you're saying. That's what I get. So let me actually sort of change the conversation here a little bit and talk about how do you see yourself maybe in America in politics? How would you perceive now? I know you were I think you're still like a filmmaker. Are you still wanting to be a filmmaker, politician? How do you see yourself directions?
That's such, I've been questioning myself so much because ever since I was a little kid, I knew I wanted to be an actor. Mm-hmm. I was like 4 or 5 years old when I knew I wanted to be an actor, but I was in the Dominican Republic. I didn't know I was going to come to the United States at that point. My parents were still together, and the fact that they divorced is what brought my mom here. So I've always known, but I remember a specific something that happened to me when I was a kid. I was like 9 years old or something like that. And my best friend at the time asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be an actor. She started laughing at me and she said, oh, do you really believe that? That's like, imagine another 9-year-old telling me that I'm not being realistic. Usually a 9-year-old tells you, okay, great, but no, she told me that I was not being realistic and that I was never going to be able to be an actor. And after she told me that, and she told me she was going to be a dentist, and she is a dentist right now. And when she told me that, I never again told absolutely anybody. I never said anything. And my father is a lawyer in the Dominican Republic. So that was kind of like pushed towards me. So when I came to the United States, I went to university. I did criminal justice because I wanted to be a prosecutor. But I took my electives as theater. And after that, I saw so many people doing what I wanted to do. And I said, you know what? I'm going to live my life. I'm not going to do what other people want me to do, especially my father. So I finished my career, my bachelor's degree. I have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, but then I decided to continue with acting. And that's when I started. I was like 21 at the moment. So I took classes, etc. And it wasn't until 2019 that I came up with a great idea from something that had happened to me. I was on the phone with my mom and I was like, Mommy, what do you think about a movie like this? And my mom would be like, that would be a great movie. I was like, okay, bye. I didn't know how to write a script. I just started writing because, you know, I was familiar with scripts as an actor, but I didn't know the structure, anything. I've watched many telenovelas, so I knew how the story was supposed to go. So I just wrote it. And I sent it to a director friend of mine, and he's like, "You wrote this?" And I was like, "Yes." And then he gave me great feedback. Of course, he told me like the structure, you have to make sure that it's the way that it's written. But basically, he told me that that was a great story. And I was like, okay. So I started writing my ideas because I've always had great ideas, I think. I might be biased, but I've always wanted to be a storyteller. That's the best way for me to combine the acting, directing, and the writing, because it's not only that I want to be an actor, I also want to direct what I write, and I want to tell the stories that I want to tell. So storytelling. But then now, being Dominican, born and raised, having a thick accent, and being Latina, of course, that's going to be like hard for me to accomplish. And I am aware of that. I've always been aware. Even in Spanish, you know, I did some stuff for Telemundo. Even in Telemundo was very hard. Plus, I thought I was cute, but apparently not cute enough, you know? Because now, you know, the telenovelas, they want a girl that looks like a Victoria's Secret model, you know? And apparently I'm not that cute. So it was very hard. And I was like, and it bothers me because at the same time, in the Latino community, for you to succeed, they have these beauty standards. So it doesn't matter how good you are. It's a lot how you look, and then social media played a role, and you have to have X amount of followers for them to consider you. And as you can see, all of my content that goes viral is politics. And then politics came along, and that started to move a lot faster than my storytelling career. So I started on TikTok after George Floyd died, and then Rachel Brooks less than a month after. That's when right after Rachel Brooks. That's when I started making the videos on TikTok. And politics has moved so fast, and things that I was not expecting just started to happen. And now I'm at Univision, you know, being a political analyst on a show specifically about politics. And I'm like, what do I do now? People tell me you should run for office. And I'm like, I think I should run for office. But at the same time, how do I manage? Because politics takes a lot of time. And, you know, I have to be informed. You have to be always reading, researching, especially I don't want to be wrong. I'm a fact checker by nature. I guess that's the lawyer that I was supposed to be. I'm like always on top of the information. So I barely have time to write now. I barely have time to film, you know? So I am in this dilemma of what should I do? And at the same time, I'm like, I'm at Univision, so maybe I should continue this, and maybe I'll meet the right person there, and that person will help me produce and my stories, you know? So as of right now, I am doing mostly politics. I don't know if I will run for office at some point, maybe, but I do not want to abandon my filmmaking career.
Well, so let me just go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
With politics, there are some organizations that will help you get started or point you in the right direction. Once you decide to run for politics, you have to start to build a team, a support base, and it'll help teach you about fundraising. And then again, there's people like AOC, Ocasio-Cortez, who, you know, she did have a team, but for the most part, in her district, it was mostly Latino, and there was, you know, white lady who had been the incumbent for 25 years, and she mostly just went door to door, elbow grease, and introduced herself, and that alone pushed her over the edge to unseat somebody who had that seat from 25 years. And there's a lot to be said for just getting off your butt and getting out there. But I can send you some links, and I'll include some links in the description for this episode if you're considering a run for office, how to get started.
Este episodio está patrocinado por el Festival de Cine Latino y Caribeño Vision, que se dedica a garantizar que los cineastas latinos y caribeños tengan una voz que se escuche y una amplia audiencia para mostrar su trabajo. El Festival de Cine Latino y Caribeño Vision es el único festival de cine latino y caribeño combinado que califica para los Oscar a los cortometrajes. Cada año, Vision proyectará a los ganadores de las categorías de cortometrajes en vivo en los cines en ambas costas durante una semana como parte de los requisitos para la consideración del Oscar. Haga clic en el enlace en nuestro perfil ahora para enviar su película al próximo Festival de Cine Latino y Caribeño Vision para compartir su trabajo, llegar a su audiencia y convertir sus sueños en realidad.
Not right now. If I do it, it's gonna be in a few years. I participated with many Democrats here in Florida for the last election, which it was bad. I was so devastated when we didn't get the results we were hoping for. But I do have some connections. I don't know if you know who Annette Tadeo is, but I tried to help her. At the beginning, she tried to run for the governor race, but then she settled for the Senate against, no, it was not Marco Rubio. It was, no, it was not. No, it was not for the Senate. It was for Congress, to be a congresswoman and a House representative. She tried to unseat María Elvira Salazar. And they're trying to find somebody for a district that is by my house to run now. And they want a Latina woman. And she reached out, and I was so honored that somebody so influential here thought that I should run for office. And I was like, Annette, it will happen, just not now.
If you're really interested in helping the people, sometimes the nonprofit world is actually better than politics. If you're trying to connect directly with the people and change their lives, then also politics on the local level has more of a direct on the Joe the plumber of the world than necessarily the senator or the representative. And so there's options out there. The local level is really what influences everybody's life on a day-to-day basis, even running for city council.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, I do see myself running for office at some point, but I think that there's so many ways in which I can help people. And even like when my writings, my scripts, they're always about something that it's social. And you can see that I'm definitely who I am in the things that I do. And I think that even with a movie that it's about social justice, that's also a way to help. I feel like I help with my videos on TikTok. So I think that there's so many ways in which I am doing a little bit, obviously that will be a more direct way of helping, but I definitely like filmmaking. It's definitely one of the things that I do not want to abandon. And the stories that I make, come on, the Democratic Party should be funding me so I can make my stories, like for example, I have a short film on different festivals. It's called Getting Aria Back, and it's about human trafficking. The tagline for that one is, when a CIA agent's niece gets kidnapped, she will look for her in all the wrong places. So it's going to be, I'm going to give the audience a story with a lot of action, very entertaining, that is going to be about an issue that we are not talking about. But at the end of that movie, I only have the first 10 minutes because you know it's very expensive. But by the end of that movie, people will see human trafficking as a whole different thing, because it's easier for you to tell a story about one particular kid than statistics. People will remember that easier than they would if you tell, X amount of kids get lost or get trafficked a year in X country, So I do think that my storytelling is very social, very aggressive in the way that I tell the stories. I'm very raw. And I do think that it's also a way to help, to create
in many ways. Go ahead, Charles. So Heidy, in many ways that art, they call it the soft sciences, and I say it's a misnomer. people believe in facts and numbers and statistics because it's easy to understand how it affects the world. But just because it's easy doesn't mean that it has more impact. But with
It's not
storytelling, arts, a painting, that can affect somebody to go find the cure of the cancer. Like your short film or your feature film can cause such a great change within so many people that it affects change at the legislative level. And so don't underestimate the power of your storytelling and the fusion of your storytelling with politics, activism, and definitely with emerging technology, social media. I tell everybody, emerging technology, if you're an artist, you need to be getting on the ground floor with every new hot platform. That's the way to get you to the next level.
I agree.
That's cool. I'll share a quick story with you, and I think you should continue with your filmmaking. When I first moved out to LA, I ran into a former senator, state senator, and I had a dream that I was going to be like, maybe I get into politics, right? But then I realized I can actually reach more people. Then I see I didn't like politics. Once I got closer to it, it just was not for me, all right? And I figured that I can do more with filmmaking because I'm a filmmaker at heart. And I just said I can reach more people with my stories. I can write a story about racism. I can write a story about sexism. I can challenge the ills of society with a story as opposed to me trying to. I know it's good to create laws, but I can initiate the conversation about changing and bringing laws to the forefront. And I think a filmmaker has that power also, has a great power because you touch a lot of people. Pictures are universal. When you see a movie, it's playing all over the world. And you can talk about climate change. You can talk about, which is one of the biggest things that mankind is dealing with right now. I mean, look at the fires in Maui. I mean, look at what's going on. People are moving, they're displaced all over the world. And it's because of climate change. And I think the way we tackle that is if we create a movie where everyone can see. So I would definitely not give up my filmmaking dreams, and I don't think you should either. Because I'm going to give you might not like a Republican, but look at Ronald Reagan. I mean, the guy was a movie star, and then he changed politics towards the end of his life, and he became president of the United States. So maybe at some point you become governor after you have a film career. You can become governor of Florida, and that could be the last part of your, life, so to speak. But yeah, filmmaking has a place in our culture and it can change culture. So I definitely would give it up. And I would love at this point to ask you, because we have a film festival, it's called the Caribbean Latino Film Festival, and we are here in California, right? We're Cal State Dominguez University. That's where the festival is going to be. And it's going to be January 13th, and then we also online with Filmocracy, and that's like on demand where we'll be showing a whole week of films. So I would love give you an opportunity to have your film, get an aerial back screening at our festival.
It will be an honor for me, for sure.
So
I'm down. Thank you.
All right, great. So let's talk about now. Let's focus on your film career. What things would you like to say as a filmmaker? Is there something inside of you like would love to talk and make it into a film?
I have so many things. I've always felt that I am different, that I see things differently from other people for some reason. I just always felt that I was not like the other people. And I am definitely too sensitive. That's something that a part of me wishes I could change about myself, but I am too sensitive too. And I want the people to be able to see the world the way I see it. That's what I want when it comes to storytelling. I want people to understand why I am the way I am through film. For example, I have the first script that I wrote is called A Second Chance. And it's very personal. It is very personal. And the message that people, specifically women, will take from that is that life goes on. because we, unfortunately, women, and the way that we are raised is to believe that there's that one person that is made for us, and that's the love of our lives. And that person comes in, and then that person leaves, and there's so many women trapped in the ideals that were conditioned to them when they were kids, and they cannot move on. They might have another person later on, a person that treats them well, a person that does all of the things that that love of their lives didn't do, but they're stuck. And I see so many of my friends making these mistakes and allowing all of these men to treat them the way that they treat them. And that message to women is, life goes on. When that person leaves you, you have the decision to make. And this also comes from my mom, from one of my aunts that died in the hands of her ex, and all of these things. I want women to understand that, no, you are the own love of your life, and you do not need somebody to come complete you. That's just a fallacy. So that's basically what I want women to understand. I mean, I've been single since I'm 24, and I do not feel people. My mom is like, when are you going to have a boyfriend? When are you going to have kids? Mommy, I'm not going to have kids. And if I do, there are specific things that have to happen in my life for that to happen. And I don't think those things will happen. So I'm not having kids. But it's like all of the pressure that we as women feel that we have to be, that we have to do specific, but by a specific age. I want women to understand that, no, you have your own life, you have your own experiences, and that's what shapes whatever decisions you make. Your life is different from other women, and we don't have to all have to want the same thing. And no, maybe a family is not necessarily what's going to complete you. I know women that thought that if they had kids and a husband, they were going to be happy. And it turns out that no, they found their passion after, and now they're like, why did I do this? I did this because my mom told me that he was a great guy, or because society told me that I had to have kids. I have friends who have everything but cannot find a boyfriend, and because of that, they're even suicidal because, I'm 30 already, I'm pushing 35, and I need to have kids. And that's one message that I want to tell women. So I just want women to see the world the way I see it. And believe me, it took a lot from me to be able to grow out of that conditioning that they do to us, not only in the Dominican Republic. This is, I think, something global. All of the expectations that people have for women. So I want to basically break through that. And that movie is basically telling them, no, that one person doesn't deserve you, and you should value yourself. You should be the first person, your first priority. I just want people to see the world the way I see it.
I know that not just women, and I know it does happen to women, but all genders can get infatuated with somebody else and saying, I need this person for my identity. I don't believe everyone should have children. It takes a village to raise a child, and we need a lot more aunts and uncles to be a part of that village to raise a child properly. And so if you don't want children, I think that's great that you understand that, and I hope you become a wonderful aunt.
I am already. I am.
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty cool. We went from politics to talking about, embracing yourself as a single woman. Is that what we're trying to say here? I know society put a lot of pressure on women to conform to a certain ideal, but there's something to be said for love, right?
Of course. Listen, but the love for yourself should be the most important. You should. I know that a lot of people get into relationships because they don't want to be alone. I am so well being by myself. And that's why I've been single for so many years. Since I was 24, I had my last relationship. And I'm not saying that I haven't seen other people or haven't met other people, but these people do not meet my requirements. If you're going to come into my life, you have to be great. You have to be exceptional. And I don't see relationships the same way that other people, including men, see relationships. For example, let's say that I meet a great person and I decide to be with that person. That person needs to know that in 5 years I might be a whole different person whom I am today, from who I am today. And that person in 5 years might not love you or might not want to be with you. So I need to be with somebody who is open to having that conversation. If something is not working, I should be able to sit down with you and say, I am not feeling it. And unfortunately, love for people means that you own that other person. I just don't agree with the way that people see relationships. And it's going to be very, very hard for me to find somebody who is where I am at. And at the same time, I also have a standard, and I'm not going to lower my standards just to be with somebody.
I wouldn't challenge anyone to lower their standards. If you have a standards and you believe in it, by all means, because it wouldn't work for you, And by the way, I'm not a relationship advisor, so I'm going into topics that are really kind of dicey for me. So, because I don't want to give anybody any sort of bad advice or come across as, not being understanding of your perspective, your viewpoints and stuff like that. But hey, I saw women on TikTok actually where what is it? Tyler Perry was saying that, if you are an accomplished woman, it's okay to have a man who can just pay the light bill. So
The light bill. Before we drift too far, I wanted to mention that you made a very excellent comment that you have to love yourself first. This is an excellent chance to plug hashtag RuPaul's Drag Race. And every episode he says, if you don't love yourself, how the hell you going to love somebody else? What happens on the outside and how you interact with other people starts on the inside. You have to love yourself. You don't have to be in love with yourself, but you have to love yourself. You have to understand yourself. You have to be happy with yourself. And that's what's going to allow your art, your activism to blossom if you are in tune with you.
And that's the way I see it. And believe me, it's not easy coming from a very conservative culture in the Dominican Republic. And, having all of these mixed feelings, I remember when I was religious, I'm no longer religious. I took a philosophy class, and after I'm like, oh my goodness. And I remember leaving class and always questioning my faith and feeling so guilty because I didn't have that strong faith that I was supposed to have. So I've changed a lot, and it hasn't been easy. And in the process, of course, you feel guilty. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't have to live for other people. You should be living for yourself. In Spanish, we say, I'm going to translate, you're going to be the only person to die your death. So live your life in your own terms.
I think that's cool. All right. So one other question before we sort of wrap this up. I mean, we talked about filmmaking, and we just talked about how you want to write a story about, women loving themselves and appreciating themselves. How do you see now from this point, in your direction, where you're going now? Is it still, I know we talked about that a little bit, but I just wanted some clarification. How do you see yourself trying to make that movie direction, that change into movies?
Well, I hope that Univision gives me the platform that I need in order to reach more people. I know it's going to be politics first, but also, being in there, I'm pretty sure that I will know the right person who will help me with my movies. And that's what I'm hoping for. VIX is it's becoming very big. It's kind of like the Netflix for Latin people. That's where the show Línea de Fuego comes on. And they have a lot of movies, and they're always looking for stories. So I'm pretty sure at some point I'll be able to sit down and be like, hey, this is the story that I have. How can we make this happen? And the thing I feel with the stories that are being told in Spanish, I feel like they're very, how do I put this? They are very much kind of like the same. And as a screenwriter, I am not the person to stick to one genre. I write whatever comes to mind. I don't care if it's action. I don't care if it's a romantic comedy, which A Second Chance is a romantic comedy. If I have an idea, I just start writing. I do not limit myself to that. But I feel like those type of stories that are more, you will think of those movies that you will see them like in Hollywood, something like Angelina Jolie playing not a second chance, but getting Arya back, because of that character I created. Very, like this superwoman who is human, of course, but like that she has all of these skills, that she's a CIA agent, things like that. I feel like we don't have that in Spanish, and my scripts are in English. But if I can make a movie with VIX, for example, and make it in Spanish and sell it first to the Latin community, to Latin America, that will be great too, And the good thing about today is that we don't have to strive to be in Hollywood anymore. We can make sure we make a good movie. We can put it on Netflix. There are other platforms, in this case, VIX, that would buy that content. And honestly, I feel like they need my content. They need my stories because they are different from what Latinos are seeing that is created for them in Spanish. Even the Dominican Republic, they should be paying me for me to write their movies. They need to step up a little bit. But yeah, I feel like we need a little bit more content, not necessarily wait for Hollywood to make those action movies, or these movies that you only see when you go to those movie theaters and you only see those specific actors that everybody knows. I want to be also a filmmaker that gives the opportunity for other actors that are not necessarily famous. Give that opportunity to that good actor, that just because he doesn't have the people or enough followers, that doesn't mean that he's not a good actor. So I also want to make sure that when I make my movies, I give opportunities to people who doesn't necessarily is a Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie and things like that. No, there are so many talented people waiting for that one opportunity. And honestly, an ideal for me would be to have my own production company where I make my own movies, where I get the content that I think is going to be interesting, the stories that I think that society needs to hear, and I give the opportunity to people to actually have that one shot, because I hate the fact that here in the world is always who you know, and now it's how many followers you have. You have content creators on TikTok that just because they have 20 million followers, because they're dancing and doing whatever they're doing, they end up being the protagonist for a movie nowadays. And then all of us who have spent thousands of dollars getting an education, trying to make ourselves better to be good actors, we don't get the chances just because we don't have millions of followers or because we don't have the right connections. And that sucks. The industry honestly sucks, and we need to change it. And thankfully, we don't have to strive anymore for Hollywood and other platforms, Netflix, Hulu, all of these other platforms exist. So we have more opportunities now.
Is there artists out there or somebody who's doing what you would like to do? Like, say, Hispanic, is there a Hispanic director, filmmaker out there that you could say, you know what? I want to do what that guy is doing. I want to do what that woman is doing.
Not a woman. I don't think that there is specifically a woman, but Guillermo del Toro, he's doing great. Eugenio Delvers, they are doing great. But I feel like I will be more like a Reese Witherspoon type of, how she created her own production company and she's like doing great. Something like that I will want for myself. And but obviously it will be more focused in giving the minorities more opportunities.
Okay.
So we've touched on this a little bit, but because I'm in addition to being a filmmaker, I'm a digital media scholar, a big proponent of emerging technology. For artists and activists out there right now who would like to elevate their voice, but may not be as far along with social media as you are, do you have like 3 tips that you would give to somebody when you kind of look under the hood that could help empower people who want to use a social media platform to elevate and empower their art and activism?
I think that you just have to start doing it. When I started doing it, I didn't know what to expect. Honestly, I didn't expect much. And look at me now. Because of TikTok, I am at Univision now. So the thing that I always say is that just start making your videos. At some point, people who like what you're putting out there will support you. And for example, I have a friend and she does comedy. And I remember she was always so constant making those short videos, very funny videos, but she would get like a few views, but she would consistently just put out the content. And one video after like 2 years went viral. And people went and found her in every single platform. Right now, I'm pretty sure she has at least 200,000 followers on TikTok more than me. But the people that follow her didn't stick to TikTok like has happened to me. Most of my followers are on TikTok. They went to Instagram, and Instagram, when it comes to following, is stronger than TikTok with the amount of following. So like 150,000 followers on TikTok is nothing. But if you have 150,000 followers on Instagram, that's a lot. So that's power right there for you to do a lot. So they went and follow her on Instagram. And right now, like, her life changed completely. She's an actor as well. Right now, she is in the Dominican Republic. They have like this important celebration, 30 years of some of the most important actors. Right now, she is there hanging out with them, and they want to take pictures with her because she's killing it on social media. And I think that she's even bigger than them on social media because they're like old school and they don't necessarily have social media like that. And I see famous people here in Miami trying to hang out with her because they are not into social media, or like people are not following because, you know, social media is kind of like a new thing. And all of these actors from before that they want to start being relevant right now, they are trying to be friends with her so that her followers follow them. So, I mean, it took a lot of consistency, and I see everything that is happening to her as a result of all the hard work. I'm not telling you that your video is going to go viral, the first video that you put out. It's about consistency, and your people will find you.
Cool. That's very inspirational. Heidy, I want to thank you for coming on the show. It's been really very inspirational and very informative. So again, I'd love to invite you at some time when you got another time when you have something out there and you want to talk about. You're always welcome to come on this podcast. You've been a great guest. How do, if people want to get in contact with you, just through your social media?
Yes. Heidy Torr, basically everywhere, and Heidy is with Heidy, and Torres is my last name, but I took the ES at the end, so it's Heidy Torr everywhere. That's how people can find me in every single platform.
Cool. Great. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It has been a pleasure to talk to you guys.
Thank you so much, Heidy. I look forward to you coming back on the show again.
Send me that link for the George Floyd documentary and the information for the film festival.
Most definitely.
Yes. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Click the link in our profile now to submit your film to the next Our Vision Caribbean and Latino Film Festival to share your work, reach your audience, and turn your dreams into reality.